Yvonne, are you muted?
Good morning. Thanks, Jerry. That was great. Welcome to the online service of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury. My name is Yvonne Ruddystein. I grew up in Sandy Hook, moved away for school and post-school adventures in Philadelphia, New York City, Atlanta, and outside Washington, D.C. I moved back to the area with my husband and daughter and joined this congregation in 2006. Both my children were dedicated at this congregation. I have personal experience with the religious education team, the auction team, the nominating team, social justice team, and the hygiene team. And I've also taught religious education for many age groups for many years and would be happy to elaborate on any of those experiences for anybody who would like to know the inner workings of those teams. I'm so glad you're able to join us this morning. And together in community, we can ensure that social distancing does not mean social disengagement. Our weekly services are more than just a gathering of our physical bodies. It is the forming of a sacred time that we've been making together for 199 years now, as we work to a just world. And in that sense of sacredness, along with deep respect, we acknowledge that our physical building is on the traditional land of the Paugussett people. For those of you new among us or reconnecting with fonder hearts, we invite you to introduce yourselves and where you're connecting from in the chat box as you're comfortable. After the service, we invite you to stay and participate in a breakout group for individual connections. Whether you are well-versed in technology or of teleconferencing or not, we welcome you. Whatever the faith and traditions of your past, whatever your theological stance, whatever your heritage, whoever you are, and whomever you love, we welcome you. You can learn more about UUCD on our website and Facebook page. We encourage you to share our Facebook page and reach out to others who may feel isolated and might benefit from the spiritual connection with our loving community. I have one announcement this morning. Reverend Kathleen will be having small meet and eat gatherings on 3 dates in September. The 9th from 5:30 to 6:30, the 17th from 6 to 7, and the 26th from 12 to 1. And the dates and times are repeated in the chat box. Groups will not exceed 10 people, and the gatherings will be held outdoors with social distancing protocols. If weather dictates a move indoors, masks will be required. And email Reverend Kathleen at minister@uudanbury.org to reserve your place. Again, welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury, where we welcome all in a spirit of compassion, inquiry, and service. And join us for our hymn of welcome, Morning Has Come.
Morning has come, arise and greet the day. Dance with joy and sing a song of gladness. The light of hope here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. A new day dawns, once more the gift is given. Wonder fills this moment shared together. The light of peace here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. Open our eyes to see that life abounds. Open hearts to welcome it among us. The light of love here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home.
Good morning. I share with you these words adapted from Anne Parrott. We come together even in times when the world is full of uncertainty, when people are fleeing, when people are evacuating, when people are grieving. We come together because we need to connect with one another. We need to celebrate who we are, to share the insights that give meaning and hope to our lives, to learn from the wisdom of others, that their truths may contribute to our understanding. So even, yes, in these times, we gather, we connect, we share, we learn, we listen, we celebrate our coming together. I invite Deb Casey to lead us in our chalice lighting this morning.
Good morning, everyone. Please gather your chalice, and as Reverend Kathleen lights the chalice in our sanctuary, let's say our affirmation together. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and justice is its light. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek and speak the truth in love, to help one another and celebrate life. I now would like to invite the children to come forward to the screen, and we will all share our children's affirmation. Let's hold our UUs up. We are Unitarian Universalists. We are people with open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. We care for the world and each other. And now Reverend Kathleen has a story for us.
I'm so thrilled today to share with you one of my favorite children's books. And anytime I am preaching on the road, I always try to bring this book along. So if you're not already fully awake, this is going to wake you up. And I'm going to ask you to participate. So if there are any children that are watching, any young people, and those of us who kind of want that inner child to play a little this morning, perhaps, I invite you to listen closely. In this story, there is a response that I hope you will give. Now, we're not going to unmute everybody for this response. You'll just do it yourself. So how loud you want to get is totally up to you. So anytime you see me giving jazz hands or hand, I would like for you to say with full conviction, and children, hopefully this will be one time you're allowed to use an outside voice inside. I want you to say, nonsense. So I'm going to do this. We're going to practice it right before we do it, even though I can't hear you. All right. So if I'm reading the story and all of a sudden, all right, hopefully you saw the jazz hand and you shouted nonsense. That is the title of this book today by Sally Kaler Phillips. What would you say if dogs grew on trees, if rhinos could fly, and chickens laid cheese? And what would you say to a bat with a hat? What would you say about that? That's what you'd say. Nonsense. It's an excellent word when you know something's really absurd. Now, what would you say if rabbits read books, and birds played guitars? And what would you say if a goldfish grew peas? What would your answer be, please? That's what you'd say. Nonsense. It's a good word to know when you're sure that something just isn't so. So what would you say if, well, what if there was a camel in the snow? What would you say? Do you know? Nonsense. That's what you'd say, because that's the word to declare when you know something is false or unfair. So what will you say if you're ever told that you're not good enough, or you're dim, or too bold, or you're not very special, you're strange, or too shy? What will you say in reply? Will you sniffle and sigh and assume that they're right? Will you kick? Will you cry and perhaps pick a fight? Of course not. Instead, you'll know just what to do when you hear something truly untrue. Nonsense, you'll say. Shout it loud and shout it far. Come on. I think I can almost hear you. Nonsense. Only you can decide who you are. Thank you for participating in the story this morning. I want to invite us into a time where we quiet, where we ground ourselves in this moment, where we breathe together and we share what is on our hearts. You have brought with you this morning joys. You have brought with you this morning sorrow. You have brought with you this morning concerns. And all of those are part of this community gathering. And so I invite you to take a moment as we listen to the beautiful music in the background, and to perhaps drop a stone in water wherever you are, or to light a candle, to type in the chat box what milestone you have brought here today. And then we will come back together for a moment of silence. But at this time, bring yourself, bring your milestones. light one additional candle for all of the milestones held in our hearts, but not shared today aloud or through the chat. Please join me in a brief moment of silence to hold all that has been shared, to hold those that are on our hearts, those who are in the path of Hurricane Ida, those fleeing Afghanistan, those in our families and our friend circles, all of the joys and the sorrows. As I strike the singing bowl, may that sound reverberate in your heart as we take this moment, and then I will strike it again to come out of the silence as we listen to Spirit of Life and join our voices in song. But let's take this moment to be silent together.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
This morning's reading comes from Rumi, the 13th century Sufi, Muslim, and mystic poet. The way is full of genuine sacrifice. The thickets blocking the path are anything that keeps you from that. Any fear that you may be broken to bits like a glass bottle. This road demands courage and stamina, yet it's full of footprints. Who are these companions? They are rungs in your ladder. Use them. With company, you quicken your ascent. Oh, you may be happy enough going along, but with others, you'll get farther and you'll go faster. Every prophet sought out companions. A wall standing alone is useless. But put 3 or 4 walls together and they'll support a roof and keep the grain dry and safe. When ink joins with a pen, then the blank paper can say something. Rushes and reeds must be woven to be useful as a mat. If they weren't interlaced, the wind would blow them away. This ends the morning reading.
It is now time for us to give our support to this community. If you are with us for the first time, we are so happy that you've joined us and we invite you to pass the virtual plate. We hope that you'll come back and see us again. members and friends, please express your generosity by clicking on the link that will be provided in the chat to make a donation. You can also mail a check to UUCD at 24 Clapboard Ridge Road in Danbury. Even though we are not all presently in our sacred space, our expenses do remain the same, and hopefully we will be back together there again very soon. Thank you for doing your part to support and sustain this community. Now, please join me in our congregational response. In the spirit of compassion and service, we dedicate these, our offerings.
One of my greatest pleasures in congregational ministry is when there are lots of children in a congregation. I especially love when I'm given the opportunity to spend a few minutes with children on a Sunday morning at the start of a service during the Time for All Ages. I so look forward to that time coming again for UUCD. I can remember vividly serving a congregation where I thought, maybe I'll try to be funny with the children. That's always good, right? Kids love jokes, they love corny jokes. So I thought, let me just tell a little joke in the Time for All Ages to get things started. And I thought it was a pretty good joke, quite frankly. I thought it was a good one to share with children. So as they all sat down with their beaming little faces and they were so ready, so I said, tell me, why did Wi-Fi and the computer get married? Now, I waited a few moments. Are you thinking about it? The children were thinking, the wheels were turning. Are you ready for it? They got married because they had a connection. Okay, crickets. And it's not just because we're not together in the same room. That was a similar reaction I had from the children. Crickets. So a 5-year-old, just turned 5-year-old little girl who was clearly wise beyond her years, let out the deepest groan that I have ever heard in my life. I don't think she quite learned the art of eye rolling yet, but she did have the deep groan down to a T. So I said, not funny. And she looked me straight in the face and said, Reverend Kathleen, you need to keep working in the daytime. Now, I think what she was saying was keep your day job. But I had told that joke as a way to try to start a conversation with the congregation about the topic of connection. It's a topic that I am deeply passionate about as a minister, as a teacher, as a person. The concept of connection is what I see as an important part of the purpose of this community, of the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Danbury. Existing to provide a community where people find inspiration and meaning through connection. And my own understanding and definitions and descriptions of connection have been ever evolving throughout my life as my life evolves. I do know that in this time of uncertainty brought on by the pandemic, by rising rates of infection right here in Danbury, calls to return to masks indoors, maybe outdoors, calls again for the importance of social distancing. Connection is not a given. In fact, it can be very hard to find. It can be deeply difficult right now for many people. Maybe for you. The most powerful definition of connection to date for me comes from author and research professor Brené Brown. Perhaps some of you have heard of her. She says, connection is, and I quote, the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and when they can give and receive without judgment. Wow. Imagine that in your life. Imagine that kind of connection, the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and when they can give and receive without judgment. That energy, that is so powerful. So with my mind and my heart focused on the power and importance of connection, I developed a simple little connect the dots model. I use it in my personal life to assist me in creating that type of energy that Brené Brown speaks of. It's a model that you can use in your personal life. It's a model to be used in congregational and community life. It's a triangle model, very simple, with 2 points of awareness as the foundation, and then a third point of action. So let me illustrate with dot one. Dot one, so located, let's say, on either the right or the left bottom portion of the triangle. That first dot of connection is we cannot live for ourselves alone. It comes from the wisdom of Herman Melville, 19th century American novelist. You probably have heard of him. You may be familiar with his writings, but did you know he was also a member of All Souls Unitarian in New York City? Melville said, our lives are connected by 1,000 invisible threads, and along these sympathetic fibers, our actions run as causes and return to us as results. Consider that point of awareness. We cannot live for ourselves alone. And let me ask you a question that I would like for you to answer silently. How many people would you feel comfortable discussing a very important and very personal issue with? How many people in your life? I want you to take just a couple of seconds to think about that. There's no right or wrong answer. Remember, this is a very important and very personal issue. So how many people would you feel comfortable discussing that with? I wonder just how many of you could say that your answer was 10 or more people. If you feel comfortable at all raising your hand and you said you would be comfortable discussing this with 10 or more people, could I see that? and I'm not able to see everybody, there may be a few, maybe a handful, because that answer is quite uncommon. In fact, about 15 years ago, a study came out that showed from 1985 up to 2004, so we're talking quite a while ago, but between those years, the average answer to that question dropped from 3 to 2. I don't think the results have gotten much better. In the past year, 1 in 10 Americans report having lost touch with most of their friends. Most. And young women appear to have been even more affected than most in this pandemic with regard to isolation. Nearly 20% of young women today say they are no longer in regular contact with most of their friends. Half of Americans report having just 3 or fewer friends. The number has declined considerably over the past several decades to where almost 15% of us in this country have no close friends at all. 15%. That's tragic. There were reports that analyzed 150 different studies of social support, and it suggests that social isolation increases the risk of death about as much as smoking cigarettes, more than either physical inactivity or obesity. Social isolation. It's important to know that when we feel lonely, I found this so fascinating in my studies. When we feel lonely, there are regions of our brain that activate in a similar way to when we feel physical pain. Our brain recognizes pain as pain, no matter what kind it is. It recognizes pain and it reacts similarly, whether it's the pain of loneliness or stubbing our toe. The Scientific American explained that when we experience social pain, so if we were rebuffed, if we received cruel words, the feeling is just as real as physical pain. So our need to connect is as fundamental as our need for food, water, and shelter. You see, long before there were any primates with a neocortex, mammals kind of split off from all the other vertebrates and evolved the capacity to feel social pains and pleasures. It forever linked our well-being to social connectedness. But isn't it funny that we often insist that that need is immature? I'm sure you've heard that before. You know, it's time to grow up, get over it. Connection is dependence. Stand on your own 2 feet. That, dear ones, is nonsense. It is absolutely absurd, because the truth is, the deep need to be connected is present throughout our entire lives, from birth to death. We need to be connected. Social relationships are a critical component of meaningful life. And those relationships, those connections are born out of the subjective experience of belonging. Belonging. It's a faith that's affected by your mood, by your health, by self-perception. So it doesn't matter how many Facebook friends you have, or if you're younger, because I've heard that Facebook is now only for us old folks. So it doesn't matter how many TikToks you watch. Doesn't matter how many likes you have on your posts, or how many Twitter followers you have, how many contacts are in your phone, or if you're really old school, how many names are in your address book. Belonging has nothing to do with how many people you know. It has nothing to do with how many places or organizations you belong to. Belonging is primal. It's fundamental to our sense of happiness and well-being. I think we all recognize the inspiration and meaning that can be found through a variety of experiences and can certainly be found solo. Think of art and music and nature. But when we can find inspiration and meaning through connection, we satisfy that fundamental human need. We are wired with a need to belong, to be a part of something, to have shared experience. Belonging has broad consequences. So it was interesting when a very good friend of mine, Tom Krattenmaker, I want you to keep that name in your mind, Tom Krattenmaker. Tom authored a book called Confessions of a Secular Jesus Follower. Tom is a friend of mine, and he will actually be speaking with you in October. But it was so interesting when he wrote these words. More and more of us are experiencing the ups and downs and the triumphs and devastations of human existence, the births and deaths and all the major milestones in between, with no religion to lean on, no divinely ordered structure to hold us. We face our mortality and all of the other vexing mysteries of life naked. What happens now to society and us? Well, it brings me to that second point of awareness. The second dot. This one. We don't accomplish anything in this world alone. This one comes from the wisdom of Sandra Day O'Connor, the first woman to serve on the US Supreme Court. She said, "We don't accomplish anything in this world alone. And whatever happens is the result of the whole tapestry of one's life and all the weavings of individual threads from one to another that creates something." In my doctorate studies a few years ago at New York Theological Seminary, I found it a tremendous challenge to be the only humanist student, the only non-theist student in the entire school. But rather than be defensive, I recognized there was an opportunity for connection that I had with my fellow students. Now, of course, this was after they said, "But you don't look like an atheist." To which I said, "And could you please tell me what one looks like?" And to which they said, "But you're so nice." In a paper that we were required to write about the purpose for human life, I noted that in monotheistic religions where God is the creator of humans, the purpose for human life flows from the purpose for God's creating. Therefore, it may be concluded, I said, that the purpose of life is the realization of what is most essentially human, the manifestation of God within. But that was in conflict with my humanist thought. My fellow students were intrigued, and they asked for more. We connected by sharing. One of my UU seminary mentors, I shared with them, William Murray, encouraged me in my ministerial formation as a humanist. And Reverend Murray summed up the viewpoint as such, and I quote, "Life's meaning is not a given. It's not inherent in life itself, and it's not dependent on belief in God. We are the meaning makers. We are the ones who make our lives worth living. Humans are responsible for what we are or will become. No deity will save us. We must save ourselves." While other creatures have life and consciousness and intelligence, and even some have limited linguistic ability, only human beings are responsible to choose their manner of life and hence their destiny. Responsibility is central to what it means to be human, and that responsibility connects to purpose through relationships. We don't accomplish anything in this world alone. Human beings are social beings. We're participants in that web of all life, joining in interdependence. And that is where we find identity. That is where we find meaning and fulfillment as it's manifest in connection. I often think back to my own experience of longing for belonging, looking for connection in a community where people would come together and have a desire to live ethical lives and improve on the world, a connection where I could be seen and heard and be able to give and receive without judgment, where my children would decide who they were, where my children could call out nonsense when things were unfair and untrue. I wasn't interested in dogma. I had no time for creeds. I didn't even know what Unitarian Universalism was at that time in my life. But in West Reading, Connecticut, my family and I happened upon some rustic structure tucked away on a wooded residential street with a sign that was, truth be told, kind of small. There was no clearly marked entrance because there were two buildings. So we sat in the parking lot and we waited and we watched people come from their cars, go into this building, leave this building, and go into this building. And we figured it out. That's where we go in. It was a small, progressive congregation of Unitarian Universalists. And much to my surprise, when we walked in, I think I recognized a couple of people. They looked familiar. They looked like a couple of parents at the Montessori school where my son was going. So as excited as I was to have discovered this amazing place, I want to be completely honest with you this morning. I was sad. And I found myself feeling a little resentful. I had those feelings because here was this amazing community that I had never heard of. Here was this amazing place for connection, and no one had ever mentioned it. I needed connection at that time in my life. I needed community. I had been desperately longing for such a place. That resentment faded quickly. I worked through it, but I made a promise to myself that day. And this was 20 years ago. I promised myself that I would never forget those feelings. The excitement juxtaposed to the sadness and resentment. And I would let those feelings serve as motivation to share my discovery and to be sure to offer the opportunity for community and connection to others. Does this community hold value for you? Is this a community where there is connection for you? When is the last time you told someone about it? Is it a beautiful something that you're holding on to? Or is it something that you can't wait to share with others? Because there is someone like myself that so many years ago who is desperately longing for this place, who wants so much to belong, who wants so desperately to be part of connection and community. Being aware that we cannot live for ourselves alone and that we don't accomplish anything in this life alone, connecting those dots takes us to a point of action. The third dot in connecting the dots. This will be the one at the top. It's an unexpected action. but it is required once we connect those dots. And I'm going to see if we can get that third slide up that will show the completed triangle and that third dot. Because the other two lead us to this, and it is simple. The action is just listen. That's it. Just listen. The action is not to fix, not to save, not to change, but to listen. It comes from the wisdom of Rachel Naomi Remen, author and teacher at the University of California, San Francisco, who said the most basic and powerful way to connect to another person is to listen. Just listen. Perhaps the most important thing we ever give each other is our attention through listening. 9 years ago, a Yale student by the name of Marina Keegan, 22-year-old author and playwright, she wrote a graduation essay titled "The Opposite of Loneliness." It was distributed at the class of 2012's commencement exercises. And then 5 days after graduating and ready to begin a job at The New Yorker, Marina died in a car accident on Cape Cod. But here are some of Marina's words. They live on. We don't have a word for the opposite of loneliness, but if we did, I could say that's what I want in life. What I'm grateful and thankful to have found at Yale, and what I'm scared of losing. It's just this feeling that there are people who are in this together, who are on your team when the check is paid and you stay at the table. The time we did, we went, we saw, we laughed, we felt. Tiny circles of people we pull around ourselves, groups that make us feel loved and safe, and a part of something even on our loneliest nights when we stumble home to our computers, partnerless, tired, awake. I'm scared. I'm scared of losing this web we're in, this elusive, indefinable opposite of loneliness. We don't have a word for the opposite of loneliness, but if we did, I'd say, that's how I feel now, and that's what I want in life. What is the opposite of loneliness? Maybe it's connection. Maybe it's connection, as connection is about belonging. Regardless of your religious orientation, wherever you might be coming from today to be with this community, belonging and being valued is important. We human beings are hardwired for connection. It's how we can find inspiration and how we make meaning, how we can face our mortality and all of the triumphs and failures, heartache and deep love, simple pleasures and devastating pain that this beautiful and bruising world presents to us. Connect the dots of awareness. We cannot live for ourselves alone. And we don't accomplish anything in this world alone. With action. Just listen. We connect the dots and bring people together to learn from the wisdom of each other. We gather, we share, we learn, we listen, because we need each other. And we realize that connection is a primal need. We need one another, you and I. We are, as Rumi proclaimed, indeed, we are the 3 or 4 walls together that support a roof and keep the grain safe and dry. We are the ink and pen that bring the blank paper to life. We are the rushes and reeds woven together connected, belonging. May it be so.
As we extinguish our chalices together, please join me in our shared declaration. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again. Now please join us for our closing hymn, Lean on Me.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Please swallow your pride if I have things you need to borrow, for no one can feel those of your needs that you won't let show. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long, and I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. If there is a load you have to bear that you can carry, I'm right up the road, I'll share your load if you just call me. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you understand. We all need somebody to lean on.
Take courage, friends. The way is often hard. The path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. As to neighbor and to friend we say, Shalom, Salam, Amen. Blessed be to each and to all. Namaste.